What a week it has been for the Brooklyn Nets. On the eve of free agency, Kyrie Irving opts into the final year of his contract, and then, just hours before free agency starts, news broke that Kevin Durant has requested a trade from Brooklyn. Here with me to break it all down is New York Post Brooklyn Nets beat writer Brian Lewis. Brian, good to see you. So there's so many questions that we have. KD wants out of Brooklyn, and considering everything that has happened with the Nets over the past 3 seasons with this news, how do you view the KD-Kyrie era in BK?
Well, I mean, I view it as a dismal failure. It's probably one of the worst organizational failures in recent NBA history. But I don't view it per se as a mistake to go for it. Yeah, a lot of people will harken back to that 18-19 team that was scrappy and it was easy to root for. But the situation is that team had a ceiling, and that ceiling was not going to be an NBA title, right? Going back all the way to the Pistons in 2004. If we go from that point on, there's been 18 NBA champions, and 17 of them were led by an MVP. The only one that wasn't was Kawhi Leonard, and I think we can all agree how good Kawhi Leonard was and how lucky that team got. So that's not really a recipe for success. If you really want to win at a high level, you've got to have an MVP caliber player. And unfortunately, the Nets' only avenue to that MVP player, Kevin Durant, was bringing Kyrie Irving along with him. That was the problem. I don't have a problem with them going for it. And that was the only way they were going to have any reasonable shot. Unfortunately, it didn't work. And now it's a disaster.
A disaster, a dismal failure. Now, Brian, we have seen some recent big trades in the NBA involving star players. So what is Sean Marks looking if he's able to move Durant? What are you looking for to get in return if he's able to trade KD?
Well, you can't replace KD like for like, right? It doesn't exist. You're not trading him and bringing back another MVP. So what he would be looking for is a young all-star under control and another young player or players, and a horde of draft capital. Now, to put this in perspective, Rudy Gobert brought back essentially 5 first-round draft picks, brought back 4 picks, and a player who was first-round draft pick, right? Rudy Gobert is a fine player. He's not Kevin Durant. So that's the kind of package that you're looking for. That should be the baseline. So there are reports out there, as an example, that the Nets called and asked for Edwards from Minnesota or Cat, one or the other. That may not end up happening, but you should think along these terms, whether it's Scotty Barnes and a bunch of good young players or Brandon Ingram and a bunch of good young players and draft picks, or even Donovan Mitchell. Now, some of these guys have issues in that they cannot be on the same roster with Ben Simmons, and I'm not going to bore the listeners, but if they were to bring back some of these players, that would mean moving off of Ben Simmons. But I think these are the kind of players that they're looking for.
It'll be interesting to see what they are able to get for Kevin Durant. And lastly, Brian, KD wanting out undoubtedly is going to have impact on the Nets franchise. But what does this mean specifically for Kyrie Irving? And has he played his last game as a Brooklyn Net?
As you know, I don't bet because I don't like to lose my money. But I would be shocked if Kyrie Irving plays another game for the Brooklyn Nets. Now, there's always a chance that they can't find a deal that they like for him, and he ends up in training camp while they're still continuing to sift through some deals for him, or, possibly end up buying him out. But I don't think he'll play for the Nets, and I don't even think he'll be in camp. I think the issue is you have to deal with Kevin Durant first, because that trade is, first off, more important, and 2, more complex. It may have to be sequenced properly, or the whole thing can fall apart. You may end up with a 3-team trade, a 4-team trade. Sean Marks took part in an NBA record 5-team trade. So the Kevin Durant trade is holding up everything, just around the whole NBA. Once you get that done, then you can start thinking about where they're going to ship Kyrie.
Going to be interesting to see what the Nets are able to do and how this saga unfolds. A lot of drama in Brooklyn. Brian Lewis will be covering a lot of that around the Brooklyn Nets. Brian, good to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, anytime.